We begin tonight with the Supreme Court striking down affirmative action and reshaping college admissions. In a 6-3 decision, the justices ruled that Harvard University and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution by considering race when deciding whether to admit someone to their school. A landmark case overturning nearly 50 years of precedent. The latest example of the conservative majority redefining American law, including abortion rights and guns. The ruling means higher education institutions will need to come up with new ways to create diverse student bodies. Groups of protesters, mostly made up of young adults, gathered outside the court to voice their outrage. And to underscore how monumental this case is, 6 of the 9 justices wrote opinions, many personal and strongly worded. CBS's Major Garrett has all the new details and will start us off tonight from outside the Supreme Court. Good evening, Major.
Good evening, Nora. Yes, it was personal, with justices on the touchstone issue of race talking to and past one another. This sweeping and historic ruling effectively ends affirmative action in college admissions, reversing decades of precedent that less conservative court majorities had protected and giving colleges and universities some latitude to consider race as one factor as they sought to build more diverse student bodies. Writing for the majority, Chief Justice John Roberts said admission policies at Harvard University and the University of North Carolina violated the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. The student must be treated based on his or her experiences as an individual, not on the basis of race, Roberts wrote. Many universities have for too long done just the opposite. In a scathing dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor accused the court majority of ignoring history and precedent. The court cements a superficial rule of colorblindness as a constitutional principle in an endemically segregated society where race has always mattered and continues to matter. At the White House, President Biden criticized the conservative majority.
This is not a normal court.
And said the nation must find a new way to achieve diversity in college admissions.
What I propose for consideration is a new standard, where colleges take into account the adversity a student has overcome when selecting among qualified applicants.
The opinion also exposed deep personal and ideological divisions within the court. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first black woman to serve on the High Court, wrote in her dissent, quote, "With let them eat cake obliviousness, the majority pulls the ripcord and announces color blindness for all by legal fiat." Clarence Thomas, the court's other black justice, responded, quote, "Justice Jackson uses her broad observations about statistical relationships between race and select measures of health, wealth, and well-being to label all blacks as victims."
We won't go back!
Outside the court, students and civil rights leaders assembled to protest.
I think in this moment in time, it's important for every institution, from colleges to corporations, to commit to pledge to diversity no matter what.
Ed Bloom, the president of Students for Fair Admissions, brought the case to the court, arguing race should not factor into admissions decisions at all.
Ending racial preferences in college admissions is an outcome that the vast majority of all Americans, of all races, will celebrate.
CBS News polling shows that 70% of Americans think race should not be allowed as a factor in college admissions. But statistics indicate that in states that have banned affirmative action, such as California and Michigan, admissions for black and Latino students have fallen dramatically at their most selective universities. Shruti Kumar, a student at Harvard, opposes today's court ruling.
I think the idea that our society can be colorblind is a silly one. We don't live in a perfect meritocracy.
The decision was praised by most Republican primary contenders, chief among them former President Trump, who took credit for appointing 3 of the justices in today's conservative majority. Former First Lady Michelle Obama said she had benefited greatly from affirmative action and vowed to continue her work to build more minority inclusion in higher education. Nora?
Major Garrett on this landmark case. Thank you.
Welcome back to Breakdown Friday. Joseph Ward, Patrick Irvin, a.k.a. Super Pat, Professor Carl Tone Jones. We are here breaking down the Supreme Court's recent ruling or overturning of affirmative action, and specifically targeted the University of North Carolina and the University of Harvard. This has Clarence Thomas written all over it. Clarence Thomas has had a personal beef with affirmative action since he felt like he didn't get admitted into college because of affirmative action. So of course this has his hands written all over it. But we're getting into how does this affirmative action decision affect Black people, because that's, you know, that's who we are and that's who we concentrate on. That's who we make these breakdowns for. So start with you, PC. What are your overall, well, what are your first thoughts about this overturning of the affirmative action, this the overturning of affirmative action, and how you feel it will affect Black people?
Probably don't care about the affirmative action. To be perfectly honest, man, it's only served us in title only. It, since the official affirmative action rulings and policies have gone into place, Black people have gotten probably 10% of affirmative action gains, and so the primary benefactor of affirmative action has been white women, which I think was the goal altogether. Altogether. So when you start talking about other groups, other groups such as the Asian community, the brown community, and so forth, they have benefited just as much, if not more, from affirmative action we had. So when you talk about the effects it's going to have on the Black community, I may the black women may suffer from it because they're the only group that might have gotten a little bit, and you could talk about the academic gains that Black women have made over the last few years that have been reported in regards to their enrollment in colleges and things of that nature. But so they may need to worry about that safety net, providing them access to that. But in terms of the Black community as a whole, I don't think it's going to affect us that much. And in fact, I think it should inspire us to start doing for self, start, working for us. So that was the first part. The one part I don't really like about it is that how the black community is always scapegoated when other groups who identify as minorities don't get what they want or get the lion's share of the pie. Like I'm tired of this shit. I'm tired of the whole anti-Asian hate bill was based on maybe 5 or 6 videos of somebody getting attacked in and I'm like getting attacked in like a subway or on the street, and it looked pretty suspect, the video. But you had situations where white men were going into Asian beauty parlors and Asian massage parlors and literally blowing them away in mass killings. But the whole lion's share of the Asian hate bill was directed at protecting Asians against Black folk. I'm tired of Black people being the scapegoat for everything that goes wrong in this country. We got our shit, but the majority of time is Black people responding to the being in a system of white supremacy that was built off of anti-Black hatred. So, and I'm gonna rest right there because there's a lot more I want to talk about. One of the things, we'll bring it up a little later on, but I'm just tired of the scapegoating.
Yeah, it's a lot of scapegoating in this because this is groups of people, mainly whites and Asians, who are upset that Blacks and Hispanics are getting admitted in what they feel is, well, Blacks and Hispanics are getting admitted at higher percentages, but not necessarily higher numbers. But we'll get into that. So, Pat, what are your overall thoughts about this affirmative action overturning?
When it comes to the affirmative action piece, let's say this, right? I think it's interesting because to me, this is another example of why Black people should stop screaming about being a part of a democracy and wanting to join up with these clubs and groups that want to create 100% pure democracies. Because again, we're a minority population in a nation that wants a bunch of things that don't benefit us as a group.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I agree with what PC said about affirmative action largely being like a symbolic gesture. That's not to say it hasn't had any impacts. It has had some tremendous impacts, but last bit of information I come across agree with PC. The overwhelming benefactors of affirmative action have been white women. So that being there, but then I think black people have to understand and accept that the vast majority of the nation doesn't like affirmative action,
Mm-hmm.
and we live in a place where we are not. I don't know how to make that any more blunt. So I like it as a representational piece of, look, black folk, y'all keep saying we need a true democracy where and then our voices can truly be heard. And in the true democracy, most people in America don't want affirmative action. They don't agree with it. They don't like it. They don't even understand how they primarily benefit from it. This is
Mm-hmm.
spoken of from all of the groups out there that contain a bunch of white women that only have a voice because of affirmative action.
Hey, hey.
I got a
So
question.
So yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead.
How will this affirmative action bill affect HBCUs where,
Well,
so like you see the, okay. All right.
Well,
you
and
know we're
that's why,
going.
yeah, because that's why I stopped where I stopped, because I was like, well, PC hit that on the head, in terms of like we really need to start doing more for, like, affirmative action shouldn't be necessary.
Yeah, it shouldn't be. But so just to make sure that everybody's on the page with what affirmative action is, let's give a break. Let's give a clear definition of it. And this comes from Bill of Rights Institute.org. And affirmative action is a policy usually carried out by schools, businesses, government entities, and federal contractors in which individuals of minority racial status are afforded preferential treatment on the basis of race. Once again, this is how this website is wording it. Affirmative action came about as part of a desire to rectify the traditional underrepresentation of minority peoples in desirable professions and universities, which negatively impacted their financial and social conditions. Supporters of affirmative action claim that it is a necessary mechanism that corrects the wrongs of the past and ensures equal treatment and an equality of outcomes for minorities. Many supporters also argue that white Americans have unfairly benefited from the nation's long history of anti-minority discrimination, which gives white Americans an unfair advantage called white privilege. Opponents of affirmative action claim that it is a form of reverse discrimination that unjustly harms well-being and denies equal access to opportunities for non-minority peoples and for minorities that sometimes do not receive affirmative action coverage, such as Asian Americans. So make sure we
Now,
know what we're working with.
hold on, and even to that whole definition is bullshit.
Thank
Mm-hmm.
you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, when we hear that, let's be clear. The initial affirmative action, the push for it to be legislation, was about reparations. It was an actual act of reparations. The actual official drafting was about preparing the damage that was inflicted upon descendants of slaves in this country, not fucking minorities, descendants of slaves in this country who also had to go through Jim Crow and all the other different forms of racism, white supremacy that stagnated black wealth, robbed black people of wealth, and destroyed access to wealth. That's what affirmative action was originally supposed to be before it got convoluted in Congress. So that definition doesn't hold any water to anybody that actually knows anything about the origins of the conversation concerning affirmative action.
Right. So what brought this to be currently that what we're talking about and the overturning is, like I said earlier, specifically dealing with University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and Harvard. And the SFFA, the Students for Fair Admission, the petitioner Students for Fair Admissions, they are the ones basically who have the lawsuit against Harvard and UNC. They are saying that there's that white students and Asian students are being overlooked because of race, and preferential treatment is being given to black students. Um, Now, North Carolina and, well, more so Harvard than North Carolina, from what I was reading in the lawsuit, but Harvard, from for how they worded it in this lawsuit, is, well, they've put themselves in a space to where they want to continue, they want to have the racial diversity on their campus, so they say. So the affirmative action that was in place, they felt helped them be able to, and I'm going to say this, cherry pick the best of the best of the blacks. Um, and I use that word cherry pick because that's just what they're doing. They're taking the best of the best. So that goes into what you asked about the HBCUs, because we know that the brightest and the most accomplished black students who are qualified for Ivy Leagues, they aggressively go after these black students to put these black students in these institutions, which means they're taking the resources out of our community and away from our HBCUs. Also, there's another video I watched who the way they framed it is the brightest and most accomplished black students before affirmative action were forced to go to lesser universities. And after affirmative action, they were given a leg up to be able to go to the Ivy League schools in places like UNC and Harvard. So now they're saying, because this is being stripped away, you will see, they expect to see a dramatic decrease in the number of black and Hispanic, but we concentrate on black, but black and Hispanic students at these institutions. And so the Asians and the whites are like, I don't like it. This is not helping us, and we want to have this reversed. And so that's where the SFFA comes in to be able to bring lawsuits against the schools. Mm-hmm. So it's what we're dealing with. They are, well, because it's funny because the minorities. The idea is the minorities is supposed to stick together, but I think this is another example for black people to pay attention to about what I always say is that racism is a team sport. And other races of people will group up against us if need be, especially if it doesn't benefit both. But racism is a team sport, and if we're not playing as a team, we're going to lose as a team, whether you want to or not. You have to play this game. And so,
well, I think one of the things we need to accept, and it's funny, PC and I was talking about acceptance the other day, earlier today. One of the things we need to learn to accept, the whole framing of this conversation is broken. Let's start there. The concept of a lesser school.
right.
All right, what makes one school superior to another? Because there are plenty of programs out there that are just as rigorous, just as difficult and thorough as a Harvard Business or Harvard Medical. But what are they missing that Harvard has that would have them declared as lesser? I think these are things that, when we talk about them, we just glaze over them, because at the end of the day, Harvard is only Harvard because of the weight that society gives to that degree and the connections of the people that have graduated from that school and gone on to do prominent things, which means that FAMU could be just as prominent as Harvard if FAMU graduates went on to do some of the amazing things that they're doing currently, but then reach back and grab some of the other FAMU graduates and built a similar network. It's not that hard to create a prestigious program when you have people that actually want to create a prestigious program going into and coming out of that institution. So yeah. I think that's one component of how this conversation is broken from the standpoint of black people. We accept the narrative that Harvard is superior because it's Harvard, without understanding that, black people built black businesses that are fueled and funded and created and energized by black intellectuals from black HBCUs. And guess what? In our community, a FAMU or a Howard would be just as popular as a Harvard. The other thing is acceptance of the fact that human behavior, like, we're not just dealing with racism, right? Racism is also an offshoot of group psychology, and power dynamics. And the fact of the matter is, groups of people are all like groups are always going to want to group with themselves. People are all look, black folk, we need to accept this. White people are always going to want to be around other white people. That's the way that works. You ever I was talking to some young people about this a few weeks ago because they was like, it's weird that I only seen like 3 Asian people in my whole life in Charlotte, but all 3 of them was together. Like, where did they go to find each other?
The same way you find other black folk. What you
Right,
mean?
they live around each other. What do you mean?
Don't understand the group dynamics. Don't
Right,
understand the
group
race game.
dynamics. People want to be around people that are similar to themselves in as many different areas as possible. Now, that's not race exclusive. Like, if you come from a high class background with a lot of money and you have a lot of other things in common with upper class people, then those commonalities might supersede race. Ergo, you have a black person that like to be around white people. But typically speaking, people like to be around people like themselves. That is not something you can affirmative action your way out of. That is something that if you got a problem with having doors slammed in your face, stop trying to go into other people's buildings.
Well, so the psychology behind it, though, the label of lesser universities, because that goes into the cherry picking. If we can get the black people to believe that a FAMU is lesser than the Harvard, because academically, FAMU is up there. FAMU is either on par, better, or in the same ballpark as Harvard academically. FAMU constantly ranks as one of the best academic institutions in the country, constantly. But if we can get the best and the brightest to believe that a FAMU, a Howard, a Morehouse is a lesser university, then we can cherry pick. We can get that talent to come to us, and we can be able to use that for our people. But also going back to what you said, this is an opportunity for HBCUs, if they use it right, to be able to enhance themselves and bring the talent back home, but also be able to. We're going to HBCUs are going to have to change the way they operate. Black people are going to have to change the way they support HBCUs. It's just going to all have to change. The ball is in our court. They literally put the ball in our court. Go ahead.
So, and I want to go back to that whole concept that you spoke about this whole selective nature of prestigious and elite universities. First and foremost, that's CAP. All right. Harvard, Yale, and all these Ivy League institutions consistently lose debates to HBCU team in terms of the academics. They not only lose to HBCUs. Harvard recently lost a debate to a prison in New York, a team full of college students who went to Bard University, which is adjacent to Columbia University. But a prison university team beat Harvard in a debate recently. And if anybody's interested, you can go to PBS. There's a whole documentary on it right now. So that's CAP. You know what I'm saying? But it goes back to what Patrick was saying earlier. See, here's the thing that got swept under the rug a little bit. They have legacy college programs, legacy interest programs, for which you don't have to qualify for anything. You could just be related to the person who graduated from the university. You don't have to have academics to get into the university. That's been going on for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need to be super smart. George W. Bush got into freaking Harvard, if I'm not mistaken. Was it Harvard or Yale? I believe it was Harvard. Might have been Yale. He got into an Ivy League school, graduated with like a 2.0 GPA.
It was a career C student.
Right. So that what happens is on twofold. What they attempted to do, they attempted to with the passing of this, is this is just an opportunity to create disadvantages in other areas of society. So it's like the exact opposite of Brown versus the Board of Education, where Brown versus Board of Education talked about desegregation in schools, but it also lent itself to other aspects of society. So when you talk about affirmative action, now this ain't about college students. This is more so getting into banks turning you down for loans, not letting you have access. We already don't get those. This is also about promises that certain construction companies may have in terms of the allotment of contracts, city contracts and state contracts that they're allotted to. It used to be like a 5%.
Taking away that quota.
Taking away the quota, correct.
Yeah.
So this is where that is going. This is just the tip of the iceberg, because academically speaking, college degrees are practically worthless anyway, for the most part. The majority of college degrees is just to say you had a degree, and it's about building institutional debt. You know what I'm saying, for most people that go to college. Now, but that part, the legacy part, that's where they lock in the wealth and lock everybody out of wealth. And that's what really the college conversation is about. Because college really ain't about your degree. College is about the networks you build. Most people graduate from college not even getting jobs or taking careers in the fields they got their degrees from. Most people. So that's not even really so that's part of it. And I've seen it here in Philadelphia. Every year they clog up East River Drive, and it's a big ass block party for a bunch of legacy programs such as boat rowing. We're in the Northeast. Half the time it's too cold to be in the river rowing a damn boat. But you got all of these prestigious schools and universities come down to Center City, Philadelphia, East River Drive, the Schuylkill River, and have the Dadville Regalia every year, every weekend, from this point of the year all the way up until Labor Day. You're going to have the roads blocked off on East River Drive, and all it is a big ass block party on Boathouse Row with a bunch of drunk ass white kids out there. These are the ones that's going to be put in those positions, those legacy positions. That they're going to be the ones that have access to the power. So you start seeing them in tied up in political spaces, connected business wise. But when you work with them, you realize they're dumb as a doorknob, and most of them only have a job because of their last name. So we understand all of this. Now, one of the things that we lack, because Patrick brought up something else that's very important. So all these other groups want to be around each other because that's what their culture says. We don't have that culture. Our culture is to get as far away from these Negroes as possible, get as close to these white folk as possible. That's why when you experience black people moving in to white neighborhoods, they have the tipping scale. If 30% of the neighborhood becomes black, then you see white flight. Black people follow white folk to the suburb. White folk everywhere. We follow them everywhere. We're taught to abandon our spaces. That's the one thing I will agree with Umar on. We abandon our spaces to empower their spaces, to feed into their spaces, because we want to be a part of the American dream, right? So we abandon our spaces. They'll have their white business here, because one thing that's smart about them, they will leave and live somewhere else, but they will leave their business in our communities. Yeah. So that pizzeria, that Italian pizzeria that's around the corner, you might not have an Italian within 5 square miles, residency-wise, but they'll own businesses in that strip that we frequent every day, to the point where, we're actually, don't get me started on the Asian businesses that are in our community, because they don't live in our neighborhoods either. So we don't have the wherewithal to support one another. In fact, we talk culture, but we don't practice culture. Same people that talk, we need to do this, we need to do that, will be the same ones. I ain't giving them niggas shit.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of our problems though is we try to accommodate all other quote unquote minority groups. So you make me think about the BIPOC, the BIPOC thing that was going on. Like, black people always got to be inclusive with everybody, and we feel like we are the are the heads of diversity and inclusion, and we should lead the charge because of what we've been through in the past. And it's like we keep concentrating on being a part of other, like you said, being a part of other people's stuff, building up other people's stuff, and not taking care of our own, because this is a situation where, yes, this is not just going to stop at the university level. Remember, Clarence Thomas he hates himself, he hates Black people, and he is determined to end every trace of affirmative action everywhere in American society, because he wants to show white people that he is worthy, he is good enough. Let's not forget that.
Joe, but he represents 90% of Black people. But we're in denial about that. He represents the people that will comment on this thread. But we're in denial about that. Because everybody else thinks they're the exception to the rule, but they hate niggas. And they see us all as niggas. Let's just be real about that. There's a reason why FAMU, Cheyney University, Howard University, Morgan, Morehouse, Spelman, all these Black institutions aren't, you got people who graduate from these institutions that only show up for homecoming. They don't put nothing back into the institution. They don't decide, oh, I'm going to get wealthy, I'm going to build a wing over here. I'm going to get wealthy, I'm going to provide a library here. I'm going to be wealthy, I'm going to provide tech and STEM programs right here. And then I'm going to provide you an outlet so that once you get this, you go out and build something for Black people. We don't have that going on. If we're going to be truly honest, Clarence Thomas started off as a Black Panther.
Yeah.
And utilized affirmative action to get to the oldest seat, to get to the most powerful seat on the Supreme Court. And now he wants to tear it down. That sounds like a lot of niggas I know. They want to get somewhere far. And I'm using the word nigga because that's what I'm calling y'all. Y'all don't like it, I don't give a, you know what? It's true. And it's time we stop running from the truth because it hurts our feelings. We're too damn emotional when we talk about these things and not taking into accountability the fact that we have turned our backs on each other. We do not support the things that we need to support in order to be a nation. You can't tell me I live in a city that has 750,000 Black people, but not one of us own a high rise in Center City, Philadelphia. We have every major city you go to, you see a skyline in that city. How many Black skylines do you see in that city? Skylines. How many of those buildings are owned by us? But yet and still, we're the life's blood to the ones that are up and around. But in terms of working with each other, we go from balling out of control to counting every nickel and penny. I gave $5 to that particular program. I want to know where my $5 went. You know what I'm saying? And so that part is driving me crazy, because we can utilize this as an advantage if we understood how to work with each other and get over our cultural bullshit, our tribal bullshit, or understand I'm in this tribe and that tribe, but we need each other for this here. Black HBCUs.
Hey,
30% of people that go to HBCUs ain't Black.
Well, see, that's the thing too. That goes back into our insanity. I'll use that word, our insanity, because we're too accommodating and we're too welcoming. So in an attempt to not do to other races of people or other ethnicities what white people did to us, we pretty much opened the doors all the way up at the HBCUs, and the programs that really matter at the HBCUs, most people who dominate those programs don't look like us.
Oh.
Right? Because I was just on FAMU campus today. I'm always on FAMU campus, and the STEM programs, psychology, not psychology, but the pharmacy programs, the nursing program is predominantly Black women, but a lot of the STEM programs not predominantly Black people. But that's the thing. The Black people who do excel at those fields, for the most part, if you got a chance to go to MIT, you got a chance to go to these other schools under the current thinking that we have, they're going to those schools. They're not going to choose HBCUs. Every now and then, one of the geniuses, one of the best and the brightest, will choose an HBCU. But
how many of them graduate from that HBCU?
Well, that's another great question. That's a great question.
And
But
I ain't mad at them going to those other places. Come
it's
back.
about resources. But let's be real. They go to those places for resources. Like I can't remember the name of the historian right now. His name escapes me, but he wanted to go to an HBCU, but because the HBCU didn't have all the resources he needed, he ended up going to a PWI. But it's a matter of a lack of resources. It's not like we can't be more resourceful, but we're not. Go ahead, Pat.
I do think imagery plays a part. I think resources plays a part. I think perception plays a part. I think the fact is, and even to what you said, like, because I agree with it. My beef with it is when you said in an attempt to not do to others what white people have done with us. Like, that's a very real issue that black people in America have. And it's even more so an issue because we don't fully understand what white people have done to us.
Right.
And we don't fully understand what we're doing to ourselves by trying not to do something we don't understand to other people. Like it's the equivalent of a 3-year-old that knows 4 words trying to teach a 2-year-old how to talk. You know, it's like, what is going on here? Like that's how you gotta look at the situation. So I think this really is, in my opinion, for anybody that is for black progress or black progressive, this is a blessing in disguise. The fear here is that, and being a realist and somebody that has accepted the current condition of black people, we're not going to do what we need to do forward. And so my thing has always been, okay, how do we create a space where we take them basically, like they essentially just said, you know what? We don't want you to play with us no more. So we're going to take our ball and go home. But they left the fucking court wide open. They just took their ball and left.
But so on the academic level, looking at what I read about Harvard, UNC, just on the academic level, I do expect to see a drop off, but they are still going to get who they need, get the cherry pick to get the best of the black community. They're still going to do that because that's what has helped them continue their prominence. But I do believe that the affirmative action decisions that I think more will come down, and it's going to affect every aspect of our lives, every other aspect. I do think there will be a decline in academic enrollment, but those universities are going to get that top talent. Well, they're going to do that.
North Carolina definitely ain't going to be effective on their basketball team. I tell you that much.
Hell no.
No, and that's the thing, right? The programs aren't going to be affected. And so this is like, and I agree with PC when he brought up, like, the way Supreme Court arguments work, they open the door for other cases to change the way the rest of the shit works.
Right.
So
if you read the lawsuit, you see all that.
Yeah. So as far as education, this isn't going to move the needle that much. If you were getting into Harvard before this, chances are very good that you're getting into Harvard after this, because the image of Harvard is still there. It's not like C black students was applying to go to Harvard.
Right.
Like that wasn't happening. You was already like the way the community policed itself. If you had a 3.4 GPA, the community wouldn't let you apply for Harvard. Oh, you got a good GPA, but I don't know if it's Harvard good. You know what I'm talking about? You might need to apply for, like, I don't know, Brown or FAMU or something like that. So let's stop with the boo-boo there. And like PC said, the athletes, they still getting into school. So what this is really going to affect is all those people that were on the bubble, not at schools like Harvard and Yale, and not at like the prestigious schools, but at like the regular schools.
Yeah.
Like the Alabama States and the Georgia Techs.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you might not be getting into those schools, but you can still get into college. But again, so I agree with the downward looking view of it. This isn't so much going to affect education, but I still think even in terms of education, we need to look at it as, okay, we need to build institutions where laws aren't required for the average of us to get in. Like, I don't understand why black people don't have a problem with having to be the best of the best in your community to hang around with the average in somebody else's. Like, bitch, if I'm the
Yeah.
best, I want to hang around with the best everywhere. I don't want to hang out with your average.
Right.
I
Now,
don't
yeah.
understand that.
Well, it's funny though for our listeners. So one of the things that shows in this lawsuit on this is page 13 of the lawsuit under Part C, petition the student for fair admissions. It says, and this is aimed at Justice Kentaji Jackson. This saying Justice Jackson attempts to minimize the role that race plays in UNC's admission process by noting that from 2016 to 2021, the school accepted a lower percentage of the most academically excellent in-state black candidates. That is 65 of 67 such applicants at a 97.01%. Then it did similarly situated Asian applicants. That is 1,000, listen now, 1,118 out of one that were accepted out of 1,139, which is a 98.1.6%. So, the SFFA and everybody is pushing back at that and saying, well, you're complaining about only 2 black people being admitted between this time frame of 2016 to 2021. And they're saying, well, you're complaining about 2 black people. But what she's saying is, yeah, only 2 black people got in, but look how many Asians got in. And Asians are saying, well, the percentages are higher for black people to get in than us. But it's like numbers wise, though. Let's think 65 were admitted between 2016 and 2021 for black and 1,118 for the Asians. It's a game they playing. It's a game they playing, and we are an appetizer on their table, because this is what happens when you don't get your stuff together. Now you got to play by their rules.
This will happen when you have a powerful nation that, and a conglomerate of nations that are telling your country, either you have a big ass debt with us, so y'all need to do something politically to satisfy us socially. But and then it comes to the fact that you have an unorganized bottom class in America, black people, who don't have we haven't put ourselves in a position to fight any of it.
And then you got a bitch ass like Clarence Thomas, who has a need to please white people, to say, hey, white people, look at what I did. Look how I'm making America great. Look at how I'm making America better. White people, look at me, Clarence Thomas. Do you love me now?
Well, I honestly think, I don't even know if that's his motivation. Based on the things I've seen from Clarence Thomas over the year, I just think he has a hatred for who he is.
Well,
I don't even think it's about a love for white folk. I think he just has a hatred for being black.
Well, yes, I know from that documentary I was saying, you're not wrong. He has a hatred for being black. He hates himself, especially like from his growing up. He hates himself, and he hates the idea of what he thinks affirmative action has done. But from that documentary, the way it was given, the information is given, is not only do he hate himself, but he has a need to prove to them. So that's how it was framed. But I don't disagree with what you're saying. I just think this layers to the cake with that.
Yeah,
So,
I don't think he hates himself.
I think he hates the black part of him.
I think he hates what he views as the representation of what a black person is and how he's not that. Like, so, because listening to Clarence Thomas, I've read some of his work and stuff like that. I didn't see the documentary, so I'm curious about that.
I'll put the link in the description.
But from what I gather from Clarence Thomas, he has a problem with the black community, the black culture, and the way that is referenced in the media. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not like them black people over there. I'm different. And I have to prove that all black people aren't like those black people. A lot of us are like this black people, and we're superior, and we're more this, we're more that, we're less of that over there. And so I don't, and the reason I say I don't think it's self-hate is because I feel like that becomes a way for a lot of people to just brush somebody off as insignificant. Not saying that's what you gentlemen are doing, but saying I've seen that. And Clarence Thomas is a legitimate threat to the community, and
Mhm.
he has made it his mission to make liberals, all liberals, and everything that liberals support. And on the face of it, liberals support black people. He's made it his mission to make all of that shit suffer. All of it. He wants all of it to suffer. I do agree. He's very he has a lot of hatred in him. I do agree with that. But I don't want people to minimize or brush off Clarence Thomas as some self-hating weenie boy that had to marry a non-black woman because he wasn't strong enough to find his black queen. Like,
No, man.
nah, that's not
Man,
Clarence Thomas.
nah, he Clarence Thomas, he had and he has from, and I'm framing this from the documentary that I saw. He His upbringing and what happened to him, like as a child in college, he went through his Black Panther stage, and then he felt like he was done wrong by affirmative action, and then he was on a mission to put himself in the best position to please white folks, and that goes into who he marries, because his wife, if you look at the documentary, his wife's life and his life, they're not similar, but they have similar aspects of them. So their ambition, I guess, they both had the ambition of making, and I just use this term, making America great again. So
He's he's the he's the male prototype of Candace Owens, because
mhm.
we forget
Yeah.
before Candace Owens became what she is, she was pro-black with websites and all of that.
Hmm.
You know, and that's another thing we got to be careful of. And I say this in the community, a lot of a lot of our biggest enemies in the community used to be, on the face of it, some of our staunchest supporters. That's something we got to look into. Because the lady who shall not be named on the campaign to destroy the lives of all black boys and men and eradicate the black community of the Y chromosome, she also fits in that same category.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and you make a good point. Y'all make a good point about that because it's almost like uh the person that was seen that felt like they were that they had to prove something their entire life, and they created an enemy out of thin air, but that enemy is real. They in the mirror, having conversations with themselves about this perceived enemy, and then they turn their whole life towards damaging and destroying this enemy. Um, and I so I, and that's kind of how I look at them, and I think that's a good point too about talking about how a lot of nationalists, black nationalists or Pan Africans, a lot of them have resentment for the black people, and that's what I spoke about earlier. A lot of most people you talk to think they're better than the people they're talking about. They think that they live in a bubble somewhere, or they think they live outside of the reality that they're talking about, and that's when they create all this. They become legends of their own mind,
Yeah.
and that's a very dangerous thing, because what happens is they have there are real casualties that suffer from the harm they inflict. And we watched that. I watched Clarence Thomas rule on policy after policy, removing congressional seats from PG County decades ago. Watched him, laud all the different, and then still try to say, I did this because I'm a black man. Like, he still throws that in there. All the way back to the congressional hearing swearing him in when he had to defend himself against, chasing after Anita Hill with cigars and shit. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So he married, but we know what he was and the rejection he felt from that. You know what I'm saying?
Y'all got to watch that doc. I'm gonna put the link to the documentary in the description. Y'all got to going in on that Anita Hill situation. Even his own the look, man. Clarence Thomas then got away with a lot of bullshit. Just put it like that.
I was around during those times. You know what I'm saying? I'm a little older. I was around. I actually saw that.
In elementary school, I think.
I was in college watching that shit on TV.
I wasn't in elementary school then. I ain't that much.
Joe, we get it. You a baby.
Because I remember the Anita Hill case when I was younger. I just don't remember. Because what year was that?
That was the early 90s.
Oh yeah, I was in elementary school.
Early 90s, yeah. But and to tie it all back in, man, because I really want to get into this legacy stuff. Because that's something we're not talking about. And I just pulled up the case where you had wealthy white families, not 5 years ago, getting locked up and going to jail for bribing college coaches and college officials for getting their children into college on these legacy programs, these fake programs they put together so they can give their children full rides and scholarships. So they bribe the officials so that their children can go to school for free under these programs, these sports programs, academic programs they get credit for, yet and still these programs don't exist for nobody else. Like, I have yet to see in all my years of watching the Dadville Regalia, I haven't watched it, but I've had to drive through that mess every single year for the last 30 years. I've had to drive through that mess. And one of the things I've never seen is anybody that was not white or not Asian on those programs here in Philadelphia. Not one. Driving down Boathouse Row. Everybody loves it when Boathouse Row is lit up. It's pretty during the holidays and things of that nature. But what it stands for is similar to Mount Rushmore in regards to the extension or the expansion of white supremacy. And that's what it literally stands for in the literal term. You get to see. So it's a testament to that particular policy of maintaining white power and white privilege.
Yeah. I mean, but why wouldn't we hand this down? Why wouldn't we make sure that the legacy is taken care of? We the only ones ain't doing that shit. Like, we don't like race loyal. Umar used the term race loyalty. We have to learn how to be more race loyal. David Banner says we need to be more racist. Saying the same thing. We need to concentrate on black people more. We need to fix our stuff. Like we've said multiple times throughout this broadcast. This overturning of this, the overturning of affirmative action literally puts the ball in our court. So the question is, what we gonna do with it? We gonna score? We gonna play? Or we gonna keep sitting on the sideline waiting to be on somebody else's team? I mean, we have our own, so we have to nurture what we have. It might be a slow start, but it's something that we can take advantage of and be able to, I don't even want to say revitalize, but build up the HBCUs to be bigger and better.
Well, not
getting more talent in.
Not just the HBCUs. This is the perfect time to focus on trades because those are becoming very much more, especially if you talk about nation building.
Yes.
And you talk about entrepreneurial working, and then support those who do it and then have that reciprocated. So we need to, create programs where, like our own form of legacy programs, like you just said. And in addition to that, also teach them the importance of a strong work ethic, because we know we don't give black people any chances to make mistakes, and we hold black people to a higher. It's amazing to me how much higher the standard is for us to do work than any other race. It's just amazing to me. But in addition to that, what you said though, and I watched the whole, I don't know what they called it, like the third part of the Marvel comic series that started off with Iron Man and ended up with the last, movie for the Avengers. But one of the things that kept coming up with Thanos is his will. And when he had all of the gemstones, you still had to have the will and the power to follow through on that, and the will to even accept the fact that I'm going to extinguish half a life because I want the other half to live or whatever, and the willpower. And then for Tony Stark to match his will, that was his only adversary, his only true adversary in the whole series was Tony Stark. Wasn't the Hulk? He mopped the floor with the Hulk. It wasn't Thor. He mopped the floor with Thor, killed half of Thor's people on the ship. Wasn't that? But it was Tony Stark. And because Tony Stark was the only person that matched his willpower, that matched his will. As Black people, we have to match the will to fight, to overcome the destructive nature that we've been taught and trained in terms of what it takes to build. In other words, forget the white man for a second. We have to have the willpower to no longer be the nigger. That's what we have to have. We have to overcome the nigger, because the nigger is the one that said, "Oh, hell with that. I'm gonna go over here with these white folks. Oh, hell with that. I have more civic pride in my local football team and my local basketball team than I do in being Black. I have more civic pride, and I'm going to walk around and shoot." Just this week, we saw a lot of people barbecuing. Oh, it ain't for July 4th, but it's on July 4th. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'll find an excuse to do some shit. You know what I'm saying? So, bottom line is we have to have the will to kill the nigga, so that the African, so that the Black man, the Black woman can live and build a future for Black children. And until we can destroy the nigger, then the nigger is always going to be subservient to this European, because the nigger is the creation of this European.
Yeah, we need to understand that we will see negative effects from this affirmative action. I believe there will be more overturnings of affirmative action in institutions outside of the academic institutions. I believe that's coming. I know there were 4 Black women who was in executive positions who, I'm not saying they were let go because of affirmative action, but they were let go like the next day. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say what I go ahead, because it's not related.
Because I was watching the video earlier, and I know somebody make a comment on that, but we don't have any proof that was related to affirmative action. It was really around the same time.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, because there's been a wave of Black firings and silent firings. It's especially hitting Black women. That's been going on for the last few months. That has been going largely under the radar. A lot of these women that got new jobs, high paying jobs over the last, COVID period, even a few years before that. Now, when the downturn of economy and them realizing they don't need as large a workforce to produce the same output, a lot of them women are losing their jobs nowadays. So, but I did want to say one thing to piggyback off what PC was saying about the creation of the nigga, and even what you were saying, Joe, because I do think that one thing I like. So I think as a community, we have to take collective responsibility for what's happening. There won't be any negative impacts because of this. There will be negative impacts because of the way we responded to this and the way that we have moved in the past with this being on the back burner. Like, we knew at any point in time affirmative action could be taken away, and we didn't take any steps to insulate or protect ourselves from that eventuality. We knew it was an eventuality, but even to another level, like PC was saying, we've got to kill the nigga. Not only do we have to kill the nigga, but piggybacking off the last few shows, and I'm sure y'all are not gonna like, We have to stop listening to nigga enablers and
Mm-hmm.
stop listening to niggas in disguise. You know what I'm saying? Like, and just like we really got to start holding ourselves accountable on all levels, making sure that people are practicing what they preach. You know, if somebody's telling you to do one thing and then you look at their life and they doing something totally different. If somebody's telling you to avoid these types of people and you look at them and they are that type of person, you know what I'm saying? Maybe we need to stop giving passes to people that sound good or that make us feel good with their oratorical skills, and start paying attention to the people that are actually putting the rubber on the road and doing stuff. And maybe they speak softly, but they carry a big stick. They got a long resume, a long body of work where they can showcase, or even if it's a thought leader, you see them starting to put in action to develop that thought that hasn't just been a constant stream of random and erratic consciousness over more than a decade with nothing really to show for it. I think we really got to have those conversations about how we evaluate people and about what it means to be a leader and who we follow.
See, you trying to take away people's ability to feel good. We already did a show about this. Negroes just want to feel good, and that allows them to stay in that space and feel good about the the misery that we have, or the destruction that we have going on. Like we've degraded. We keep saying we've degraded over time, but it allows scapegoats, it allows excuses, it allows people to sit in their misery and just feel good about being fucked up.
Yeah, well,
Which is crazy because niggas were made to be destructive. Remember now.
well, niggas are supposed to be indestructible. That's why we think we can walk through bullets. But and to go back to what y'all were both just saying, I think it's time that we get out of this, and this is one of the biggest, totally going like off topic, but it's going to be relatable. This is one of the biggest curses of being descendants of those who were part of the black church that was started here during chattel slavery. Because even if you go to church today, the pastor rarely ever tells you about being accountable. Pastor does a service trying to make you feel good. And you're supposed to feel good. And I was even told this when I was a member of the church, that you're supposed to feel good enough to get you through the week and run out of hope just in time to get picked back up for the next sermon. But no real action steps are being taken to restore what's wrong. We can talk about living in sin. Meanwhile, we're stepping over homeless people that are living on the steps of the church to get inside the house of God. We can talk about, all these prosperity people who are talking about you do good, and the only thing you have to do is pay tithes to the church. But your community's falling apart, and there's no talk about investing, collective investing, or people addressing the things and their issues in life. And it's just the mindset that was set. It was a plantation mindset, and it's the same plantation mindset that has us now not focused on build. Because you look at plantations, even the restored plantations where black people lived on those plantations, are still fucking shacks. And that's how we treat our neighborhoods, communities, and so forth. So we have people who understood that. And whether it's a preacher, whether it's a black nationalist, and so we just remove and we exchange the amens for ashes. We explain the preach to teach, but it's the same mindset where nothing was getting done because it's not talking about the collective work. We're not talking about organizing. And what's funny, right? I watched a documentary about the murder of Malcolm X, the assassination of Malcolm X. Something very clear was brought to my attention. One of the biggest reasons Malcolm was killed is because Malcolm, if he would have ascended to the head of the Nation of Islam, right after he had that speech, message to the grassroots, you would have had the most organized, the most skilled, the most trained, and the most unafraid group of black people the entire planet has seen in this particular country at a time when this country was on fire. And that was most likely one of the biggest reasons he was taken out of here. And we haven't had anything close to that since then.
Hey man, why do white people need to take out black people in current day America when black people love being scammed? Like we love being, we can have all the evidence that somebody's doing us wrong and still follow them, no matter what realm the person comes from. Like, right, we have me and Pat still making jokes to this day about Pastor Simmons. And he done got caught like 3 or 4 more times since then.
Jumping.
But so on all and in many realms, black people love being scammed. Black people love being bamboozled and hoodwinked. We like that. Well, I ain't gonna say we, niggas like that. They like that. That's why there's no progress. A whole bunch of black people can get together on a regular basis, for the most part, and we have no progress. That's the destructive nature of the niggas. There's no mind in building. There's only mind. The only mindset comes into putting band-aids on gunshot wounds.
Well, Joe, that book you're reading right now, the Compensatory Code book,
Love it.
Ellie Fuller.
Love it.
He talked about the fact that black people, we don't like each other
At all.
So we can't even be around each other until we learn to like each other. You know, we can't even have a disagreement without it going visceral. That speaks to the internal hatred that we have for each other, the internal hatred that we have for ourselves. Because if I have self-respect and I have high self-esteem, a disagreement with anybody is not going to make me come to the point of violence, the threat of violence. I know you feel one way, I feel one way. We can debate it, pros and cons on each side. You know what I'm saying? But the fact that a debate from us can lead to somebody getting killed, and I'm not joking, even in this conscious shit, you know, I've broken up fights at so-called conscious events. I used to have to be a damn bodyguard at Black and Nobel bookstore here in Philly. And I'm on camera breaking up a fight between 2 black nationalists and Pan-Africanists. So, you know, we really have to get to that place where we reject a lot, not just reject, but rebuild, unlearn and rebuild the kinds of people we are. And stop falling into this place of idol worship. You know, all the people that talk about idol worship are the biggest fans of somebody. So when you critique that somebody, all of a sudden you're an enemy of the state. When the fuck has anybody ever been beyond critique? When? In history. And if we're idly worshiping people, I have critiques for somebody I believe is worth idol worship. That's Malcolm X. I still have critiques about some of the things he did. Some of the thoughts, some of the words he put out that are still echoing and causing havoc in our community.
Yeah.
So if and I hold him way up here. You know what I'm saying? So if we can critique Malcolm, why do people who walk this planet today, who haven't done anything close to what Malcolm has done, you wouldn't know who the Nation of Islam was? And I'm not even trying to offend nobody from a nation, but if you're a steward of your history, you would know. When Malcolm came to the Nation of Islam, it was like 3 lodges. I mean, 3, temples.
Every city he went to, he built the mosque.
Every city he went to. Malcolm X lived here in Philadelphia, in North Philadelphia, and built mosque number 12. So, you know, we have to be real about the fact that everybody is worthy of critique, and then not just idolize the historian, praise the speakers. What are we going to do about it? Because I'm tired of talking, and we are not talkers, by the way.
Well, so we've been saying the same thing. This same what you just said. Those words. How long we've been saying this in these breakdowns? That was one of the main reasons why we started doing the breakdowns, because we realized that nothing was happening with the information. Go look at the early breakdowns. We realized nothing was happening with the informations. So it's an attempt to spur our community to start to take action. If we start to take more action, when things like this are overturned, we're good. We already insulated because we're already taking care of our business. All right, white people don't want to let white people and agents don't want to let black people into their institutions no more. Cool, we got our own. Now our institutions are better than yours anyway, right? Y'all don't want us to. Y'all don't want us at y'all jobs. Y'all don't want us anywhere. Okay, we have to put stuff in place. Like I just said earlier, in the beginning, when it all comes down in the beginning, it's gonna be bad. It's not gonna be good, and that's because we don't have our stuff together. Now we will have a choice to make: either fix it or it's gonna keep getting worse. But the system ain't gonna stop doing what it do.
Can I give 2 quick examples of what a community looks like when they actually take care of their business?
Go ahead.
And this is for the unspoken community, but I'm gonna say it anyway. The Jewish community, specifically in New York City. So when they built the Barclays Center, most of the black people were upset because they felt there was gentrification, because they had to remove a lot of the fixed rate, like they had the rent control. So people have been paying, like some people were paying like, $100 a month to rent in New York.
Projects was gone.
Projects were gone. The apartment buildings were gone. So black community complained about it. They, criticized Jay-Z about it. The Jewish community decided that they were going to pool their resources together, buy some of this new property that became available in that same neighborhood, but they were going to advertise. They were going to accept Section 8 housing to help people subsidize the rent that they would have to pay. So, and y'all can all look this up. So instead of, they advertised it, but they advertised it in Yiddish newspapers around New York. So if you couldn't read Yiddish, you didn't know Section 8 housing was on Fulton Street. You didn't know that it was in Bed-Stuy, that there was Section 8 housing available because you couldn't read Yiddish. But that was the community taking care of itself. Now we can call it redlining, whatever you want. They took care of self. Then you had 2020. When 2020 happened, black people were sitting here going crazy talking about you need to open the public school so the children can eat free lunch because it might be the only meal they ate that day, which is some of the most embarrassing shit of all time. All right? So, because as a community, the children should be first priority in terms of making sure they're good. We didn't hear that problem in that other unheard of community. They had enough power. They didn't even do the whole separation. They were still having, service. They were still meeting at the synagogues. They were having funerals where thousands of people were showing up at the gravesite. And then when the mayor of the city critiqued them, within 2 days he offered them an official apology because as a community, they put that pressure on them. Here in Philadelphia, they closed down the streets. People complained about the young people on the basketball courts because they were afraid they would want to spread that what. Well, guess what? When white folk got tired of being inside the house, they put together 4 organizations. 4 organizations got together and forced the city to open up Martin Luther King Drive. Martin Luther King Drive.
In the hood, right?
Well, it's right down there on East River Drive, but it's a segment. It's on, I believe, West River Drive, the other side. But it's a segment of the drive. They shut the street down, no car traffic, just so they can go outside and get some fresh air. See, when you're organized and when you actually prioritize organizing for your community, and you're not sitting there trying to peacock and look good in your suits and look good and look in your nice little dresses and things and look the part, when you're actually doing the work, then you have the power to force your will upon other people. You can Thanos snap your will upon other people. And that's something we simply don't fucking have right now. I hope we get it someday soon, but I'm not the most optimistic because I've seen this shit happen over and over again. And sooner or later, we're going to find something. Somebody's going to be fighting in the elevator. Somebody's going to come out with a new rap verse, and we're going to be totally off this shit until it starts affecting people in their pockets.
Hey, 2 things. For one, let's let's understand that none of us have the answer to solve the race problem. We're still trying to come up with the answer. So anybody who is, we're not posing that we have the answer, but what we are saying is what we're doing ain't working. Hey, not working together ain't working. It ain't working. So why not try working together? But also, this whole race game ain't going nowhere. Whether you want to or not, we got to play as a team, and everybody on the team has a role to play, and everybody is responsible for their role, and everybody will be held accountable for their role. I don't give a damn what nobody says. Everybody has a role to play, and everybody is either going to contribute to the victory or the loss. I don't give a damn what nobody says. Everybody has a role to play. Keep thinking we don't, and watch us keep losing. But this is them taking the rug from up under a lot of people and saying, hey, we're going to look out for our own interests. Matter of fact, we're looking out for the interests of white people and Asian people. So if you don't like it, what you going to do? Are we going to accept the challenge? Joseph Ward, Patrick Irvin, Super Patrick, Professor Carl Tone Jones. Remember, FetLifeStation.com this afternoon, 7 p.m. Tune in. What you talking about this afternoon, PC?
Oh man, listen, I got my good sister Talia Jones. She's going to be pulling up, and we're going to have a vast conversation just about the state of Black America, and also we're going to talk about just the mindset of our community and things that we've seen in error, not just in error, but areas where we think we need to improve in. So make sure y'all pull up 7 p.m. FetLifeStation.com. I see y'all there.
It is. Make sure y'all support Patrick at onlyfans.com/technical Ted. My dog need the support. He got whatever you need over there. That's how we do it. Joseph Ward.
We jumping out that window like we Pastor Simmons.
Hey man, we out. Make sure y'all catch the next video.